3 in the afternoon. You ate a reasonable lunch. You're not starving, but your brain is screaming for something sweet, a cookie, a candy bar, anything with sugar, and you hate yourself a little bit for it because it feels like weakness. Like you just don't have the discipline other people seem to have. Here's what's actually happening. That craving didn't show up because you're weak. It showed up because your blood sugar crashed 2 hours ago. Your hunger hormones spiked 15 minutes ago, and your brain's reward circuitry has been trained to expect a dopamine hit at this exact time of day. The craving is biology. It's a predictable output of systems you didn't know were running. Most people think sugar cravings are a willpower problem, that people who don't crave sugar are just better at resisting. That's not how it works. Cravings are downstream. They're the result of blood sugar patterns, hormone states, reward learning, sleep debt, and stress. Willpower is the last step in that chain, not the first. Fighting cravings with discipline alone is like trying to stop a flood by standing in front of the water. You're fighting biology from the wrong end. This isn't a motivational plan. This is a 7-day protocol built on how your body generates cravings in the first place. 1 craving trigger removed per day. 1 stabilizing habit added per day. By the end, you'll understand which mechanisms were producing your cravings, and you'll have a concrete action attached to each one. The fastest way to stop craving sugar isn't to ban sweetness. It's to stop letting sugar arrive in your body without protein, fiber, or structure. Let's start with day 1. Day 1. The glucose roller coaster. Your body runs on glucose. Every cell, every organ, every thought you have uses it as fuel. So when you eat, your blood sugar rises. That's normal. That's supposed to happen. The problem isn't the rise. The problem is how fast it rises and how hard it falls. When you eat something made mostly of refined carbohydrate, with no protein and no fiber alongside it, that food breaks down quickly. Think of it like throwing dry paper onto a fire. It burns bright and fast. Glucose floods your bloodstream in a short window. Your pancreas releases a surge of insulin to clear it, and then your blood sugar drops, sometimes sharply. That drop is a signal to your brain that fuel is running low, and your brain responds the way it always does when it feels threatened. It demands fast energy, sweet energy, the exact kind it knows will work quickly. That 3 p.m. craving isn't random. It's a scheduled consequence of the meal you ate hours earlier. Here's the part most people miss. Skipping breakfast or eating something like toast, cereal, or a pastry in the morning is one of the most reliable ways to engineer an afternoon crash. The 3 p.m. craving isn't a failure of discipline. It was built at 7 a.m. Protein slows how fast your stomach empties. Fiber buffers how fast glucose enters your blood. Together, they flatten that spike, which means a smaller insulin response, which means a shallower fall, which means your brain doesn't panic at 3 p.m. and demands something sweet. Day 1's action is simple. Eat a breakfast with at least 20 to 30 grams of protein. Eggs, Greek yogurt, cottage cheese, whatever you prefer. Not a carb-only meal, not nothing. Protein and structure, first thing in the morning. That single change begins to dismantle the craving cycle before it even starts. Now, the breakfast change stabilizes your morning. But what keeps the craving machine running through the rest of the day? That's where your hunger hormones take over. Day 2. The hunger hormone signal. Ghrelin is produced in your stomach, and its job is to tell your brain one thing: feed me. Ghrelin levels climb when your stomach is empty and fall after a meal. The size and speed of that fall depends almost entirely on what you ate. A meal rich in fiber and protein keeps ghrelin suppressed for longer. A meal of refined carbohydrate, even a big one, can see ghrelin start climbing again within an hour or two. Think of ghrelin like a timer. Eat the right meal, and you set that timer for 4 or 5 hours. Eat the wrong one, and it goes off again in 90 minutes. There's a second hormone involved here, and this is where most people get confused: leptin. Leptin is produced by your fat cells and signals to your brain that you have enough stored energy. People assume that having more body fat means more leptin means fewer cravings. But leptin doesn't respond to individual meals or individual snacks. It tracks your overall energy stores over long stretches of time. That means short-term craving control. The craving you feel right now at 3 p.m. has almost nothing to do with leptin. It depends almost entirely on ghrelin, and what you put in your stomach at your last meal. This is why snacking on low-fiber, refined foods compresses your hunger cycle. Each snack resets the clock poorly. Ghrelin rebounds faster. You get hungry again faster. You reach for something sweet again faster. The cycle tightens. Day 2's action is to add fiber intentionally to your 2 largest meals: vegetables, legumes, whole fruit, oats. Fiber that your stomach has to actually work through, not fiber added to a processed snack bar. Real food that slows the whole digestion process down and keeps ghrelin quiet for longer. Your blood sugar is now more stable. Your hunger hormones are working in your favor. But here's what most people don't realize. By day 3, you're still going to feel cravings, and those cravings aren't coming from your stomach at all. Day 3. The reward loop. Your brain is a prediction machine. Every time you do something that produces a pleasurable outcome, your brain's reward circuitry makes a note, and then it starts looking for the cues that came before the reward: the time of day, the location, the emotional state you were in. Over time, the cue itself becomes powerful enough to trigger wanting, completely independent of whether you're hungry or not. This is why you can crave something sweet at 3 p.m., even on a day when your blood sugar is perfectly stable and your stomach is full. Your brain isn't reading a nutritional alarm. It's running a learned prediction. It sees the cue, it anticipates the reward, and it generates the feeling of craving to push you toward the behavior it has learned to expect. The craving arrives before any biological need does. This is the deepest support for the not willpower argument. You are not weak. You have a brain that is exceptionally good at learning patterns. It learned this one well. Sweet taste activates the brain's dopamine-driven reward system. Repeated exposure strengthens the cue response connection. The more reliably you gave your brain sugar at 3 p.m., the more reliably your brain will demand it there. Breaking the loop doesn't require elimination. It requires interruption. Either you change the cue, meaning you change what you're doing at 3 p.m., or you change the response, meaning you give the brain something else when the craving arrives. Both approaches work. The goal is to prevent the reward from arriving on cue, which starts weakening the prediction your brain is running. Day 3's action is to identify your most predictable craving window and deliberately change one element of it this week. Move to a different room. Take a short walk instead of reaching for a snack. Eat something entirely different that doesn't match the reward your brain is anticipating. You are not fighting the craving, you are breaking the association. Those first 3 days address the mechanisms that generate cravings: blood sugar spikes and crashes, hunger hormones misfiring, reward loops running on autopilot. But what amplifies all 3 of those systems and makes every one of them worse? This is where things get harder to hear. Day 4, sleep is the craving amplifier. Everything you just built, stable glucose, better ghrelin management, interrupted reward loops, gets undermined when you don't sleep enough. Not completely, but significantly. Short sleep does 2 things to your craving biology that work against everything in days 1 through 3. First, it raises ghrelin and disrupts the signaling of leptin. In controlled settings, even a few nights of shortened sleep have been linked to measurably increased hunger and a stronger preference for energy-dense, high-sugar foods. Your hunger dial turns up. Your satiety signals weaken. Second, and this one is harder to fight, poor sleep impairs your prefrontal cortex. That's the part of your brain that applies the brakes, the part that says, you don't need that. When it's running on reduced sleep, its ability to moderate impulse responses, including food impulses, is significantly diminished. So, you're hungrier, your satiety signals are weaker, and the cognitive system you'd normally use to resist the craving is running at reduced capacity. Here's the part that should concern you. You can eat perfectly, add protein, add fiber, interrupt your reward loops, and still lose the battle at 3 p.m. because you slept 6 hours last night. Sleep isn't a bonus feature of the protocol. It is the daily reset that determines how hard the craving systems are running when you wake up. Day 4's action is to treat your sleep window as a non-negotiable part of craving control. Aim for 7 to 9 hours. And if your sleep timing is inconsistent, shifting your bedtime earlier by 30 minutes is enough to start seeing a difference in how your hunger signals behave the following day. Day 5, the sweet swap. Now, this one is counterintuitive. You might expect the next step to be cut out all sweetness, full stop. That feels logical. If sugar is the problem, remove sugar. Done. But That's not how the reward circuitry works. When you ban something completely, the reward system doesn't go quiet. It goes louder. The cue is still there. The learned anticipation is still there. The absence of the reward creates what researchers sometimes call a deprivation rebound pattern. You white-knuckle the craving for days, the pressure builds, and then one rebound event delivers more sugar in a single sitting than you would have consumed if you'd been eating it in small, planned amounts all along. The goal isn't to remove sweetness. The goal is to stop letting sugar arrive in your body alone and unstructured. Pairing something sweet with protein or fiber changes the whole glucose picture. It slows gastric emptying, buffers absorption, flattens the spike, and reduces the depth of the fall that follows. A piece of fruit eaten with a handful of nuts produces a meaningfully different glucose curve than the same fruit eaten alone. A small amount of dark chocolate after a protein-rich meal barely moves your blood sugar compared to a candy bar eaten in isolation at 3 p.m. on an empty stomach. Day 5's action is to plan one sweet food into your day in a structured way. Pair it with protein, attach it to a meal, give it a context so it's not a reflexive grab. You're not indulging. You're using the biology of digestion to take the spike out of a food that used to derail you. Day 6. Stress and the craving override. Even with stable blood sugar, well-managed hunger hormones, interrupted reward loops, good sleep, and structured sweet intake, one thing can override all of it: stress. Stress activates a neuroendocrine response in the body. Cortisol and other stress hormones don't just affect how you feel emotionally. They actively shift your preference toward high energy, highly palatable foods. This is not a personality flaw or emotional weakness. It is a real physiological response. Some researchers believe it's an evolutionary artifact, the body preparing for physical danger by seeking fast-burning fuel. The danger is now a difficult email or a tense meeting, but the biology doesn't know that. What makes stress cravings distinct is this: they can occur even when you are not in a caloric deficit at all. You're not hungry. Your body has plenty of fuel, but the stress response is generating a reward-seeking drive, and sugar is the fastest reward available. The body isn't looking for fuel, it's looking for relief. Chronic stress layers on top of everything else in this protocol and turns up the volume on every craving system you've been working to quiet. The reward loop runs hotter. Ghrelin becomes harder to suppress. Prefrontal control weakens for the same reason it does under sleep deprivation. Day 6's action is to build one deliberate stress interruption into your day before the craving window hits. A 5-minute walk, a few minutes of slow breathing. Any practice that breaks the cortisol loop before it reaches the point where your brain starts scanning for a sugar reward. You're not managing stress for your mental health alone. You're managing it because stress is a direct upstream driver of the cravings you're trying to eliminate. Day 7, post-meal movement and the reset. Your skeletal muscle is the single largest site of glucose clearance in your body. When muscle contracts, it pulls glucose out of the bloodstream at a significantly higher rate than when you're sitting still. This means that what you do in the 20 to 30 minutes after eating has a direct effect on the size of your postprandial glucose spike and the depth of the fall that follows it. A short walk after a meal, even 10 minutes, measurably flattens the glucose curve compared to sitting at a desk or on a couch for the same period. Not because of calories burned. The caloric expenditure of a 10-minute walk is negligible. It works because moving muscle acts like a glucose drain on the bloodstream, reducing how high the spike climbs, and therefore reducing how hard it crashes. That crash is what sends you searching for something sweet. Smaller crash, smaller craving. It's a direct mechanical effect. Day 7's action is to take a short walk after your 2 main meals, not a workout, not a long run, 10 to 15 minutes of movement that gets your legs working. This is the capstone habit of the protocol because it reinforces everything you've built in days 1 and 2. You've already flattened the spike with protein and fiber at the meal level. Post-meal movement flattens it further at the activity level. The two habits stack, and the glucose architecture that was producing your 3 p.m. craving starts to look completely different. You came into this video believing sugar cravings were a willpower problem, that people who don't crave sugar are just better at resisting. That's not what the biology shows. Cravings are predictable outputs: blood sugar spikes and crashes, ghrelin rising too fast because your last meal had no fiber, a reward loop your brain learned through repetition. sleep debt turning up the hunger dial before you even wake up, stress layering on top of everything and overriding the whole system. Every one of those mechanisms has a name now, and every one of them has an upstream fix. Here's the protocol. Start with day 1. High protein breakfast, 20 to 30 grams minimum. That single change dismantles the afternoon crash before it starts. Then add fiber to your 2 largest meals. Then interrupt your most predictable craving window by changing the cue or the response. Protect your sleep like it's part of the protocol, because it is. Plan one sweet food into your day in a structured way, paired with protein or attached to a meal. Build one stress interruption into your routine before the craving window hits, and take a 10-minute walk after your main meals. 7 days. 7 mechanisms. 7 habits that stack. Drop a comment and tell me which day surprised you most. Was it the sleep amplifier on day 4, the sweet swap counterintuitive angle on day 5, or the post-meal walking finding on day 7? And if you want the full breakdown of what happens to your hunger hormones in the first 72 hours of cutting sugar, ghrelin's early withdrawal peak, and whether cravings actually get worse before they stabilize, that video drops next. Subscribe so you don't miss it. Cravings are not character. They are information. They are signals about what your body's hormonal and reward systems have been trained to expect. Understanding the signal makes it manageable. Fighting it blind makes it worse. That 3 p.m. craving you opened this video with? It was built at breakfast, amplified by poor sleep the night before, confirmed by a reward loop your brain had been practicing for weeks. Every element of it is now named. Every element of it is addressable. You know where to start.